I'm Marisa Norcross.
And I'm Dave Freund, and this is The Next Page.
Hi, Dave. I haven't seen you much this week.
I know. I run into you in the doorway as I leave the building, and that's about it.
I know. You've been busy, though, right? You did some training this week.
I did some training, and actually tomorrow I have another one of our Mastering Emotional Intelligence classes, which is really one of my favorites because it's a great class.
I know. I'm so bummed that I can't make it to that one. I feel like I always, for some reason or another, I'm like not in the office, or tomorrow is one of those days for me where I think I have back-to-back calendar commitments, including a dentist appointment, which isn't going to be nearly as enjoyable as coming to one of your classes, especially that one.
Well, I don't know.
But
some people may say that a dental appointment might be better than classes.
I mean, I do love my dentist, if he is listening.
That's good.
Dr. Danaher,
That's good.
I love you. But, yeah, I will catch it next time. I think I need to just get it on my calendar sooner.
Yeah, I think so. And, but you never know what your day's going to be. I started out really stressed today thinking my day was going to be super busy. And then for various reasons, 3 of my appointments were canceled. So I had a really great afternoon of just doing prep, prepping for tomorrow's class and prepping a little bit more for our podcast. So it was great.
Wow. Those days are like little blessings almost.
They are.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's late and they're really apologetic to me, I just say, "Oh, don't apologize. You just gained me, 10 or 15 minutes in my day, and I love it." So.
Like me today, trying to get my act together for this podcast.
That's all right. I needed those extra 10 minutes to just decompress a little bit. Good. So speaking of our podcast, some information that I was sharing with you before we started recording. In the last 30 days, of course, the most downloads we got are in New York, which is typical. But the next state that came in second was Georgia.
How many?
So we had 32 downloads in Georgia, which is
last week
unusual.
Or total?
It just gives me the last 30 days. I can't drill into a shorter period.
In the last month.
Wow. But that's amazing because I don't have any family in Georgia. How about you?
No, I don't either. So if you are one of those Georgia downloaders,
right,
send us a note.
Exactly.
Our email addresses are in the show notes, right?
The show notes, yes.
Or just go to macne.org, and on the About page, you can find all of our contact information.
Absolutely. So that's exciting, and we're at 1,860 some total downloads. So that's great.
Woohoo!
We're doing well, and hopefully people are finding value in it because that's why we do it.
Yep.
So
cool.
So we're starting something new, aren't we?
Yeah. So today we're jumping in to talk about what John Maxwell calls the 5 levels of leadership. And we're going to talk about one of those levels for the next 5 weeks. So that'll take us through the month of February. So just think, by the time we get through all of these 5 levels, we will be to the month that spring is in.
Ooh.
Also my birth month. Also my birth month. So to me, that's exciting. March is always like a sign of hope to me.
That's good.
But yeah, so we'll be doing this for the next 5 weeks. I'm really excited. We're going to start at the base level today and work our way up to level 5. So why don't you start by giving us a little bit of background on the book that inspired this, and just maybe the 5 levels, what they are, and we'll jump in.
So what really drew me to this topic was that we had been talking about employee engagement, and last week's post and podcast was about the half-truth of employee engagement, and it really had me thinking as I was prepping for last week that the reason why employees are not engaged is, quite frankly, lousy leadership. We can't blame it on anybody other than the leader that we work for. And I started wondering, so how could I identify what those issues are? And then I remembered a book that I had read a few years back, and now I'm working my way through again, which is John Maxwell's The 5 Levels of Leadership. And so I drilled in this week so those 5 levels are, number 1, starting at the bottom and building to the top. The first is position. The second level of leadership is permission. The third is production. The fourth is people development. And then the fifth, and rightfully so, is called the pinnacle. And I encourage everyone to read this book, and I will put a link to it in our show notes. But the reality is as I started thinking about my 35 years in manufacturing, the vast majority of the managers, supervisors, leaders were stuck at level 1. And the problem is that level 1, people say, well, that's good. You're a leader. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're a good one. And when you're stuck at level 1, your team, you're not getting the most out of your team. And let me just read. There is an assessment in this book that John wrote about identifying what level you're at. So for each level, he had just these 10 questions. And if you scored 8, if you could say yes to 8 or more of the questions, you're already working at that level and can move on to the next one. So let me just read these 10 statements. The first one, I don't have to remind people who work for me that I'm the leader. The second, I think of each person who works for me as an individual person, not just in terms of his or her function or role. Number 3, most days I look forward to going to work. Number 5, I recognize that position I've been given is an opportunity to learn, not a turf to be guarded. And boy, with that one there, I kept thinking of so many bosses that I knew that viewed it as they had to protect their turf.
Mm-hmm.
The people who work for me are willing to do work above and beyond their job descriptions. So if we start thinking about, am I having problems with people even doing what's on their job description? We got an issue. I know that dealing with people problems is a part of leading, and I have accepted that as a part of the job. And on that one, I kept thinking of times in my working career where I said, I am so sick and tired of dealing with people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then what in the world was I doing being a leader? I possess the desire to learn more about leadership and become a better leader. Now, the nice part is, the folks that are coming through our doors typically could answer yes to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I think of my job in terms of work to be accomplished and give very little focus to career path and positions I desire to achieve along the way. And then I started thinking about people that it seemed like there was a stepping stone. They were focusing on where they were going to be next, not really being a leader where they are at this time. One of my primary objectives is to assist the people who work for me. And I thought, wow, okay,
Yeah.
I wonder, And lastly, most people find it easy to work with me. So those 10 questions, again, you can find them in the book. I'm going to honor John's copyright, so I'm not going to take any of that and put it in show notes. But get the book and determine for yourself what level you're at. So it kind of got me thinking, so what happens when people are led by a level 1 leader? And the reality is that you don't get much from your team. You don't get the best for sure. You get kind of the least or what's left. Because what they're trying to do is they view you as a micromanager. So they're just giving you the bare minimum that they can to keep their job. Because they don't feel that you value them.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen some of this, Marissa, in your... Well, you haven't worked that many years.
Right.
You have not been alive as long as I've been in manufacturing. So we know that, and I'm okay with that.
I think I definitely have experienced some of this before, or just know people, maybe not that I've worked with, but that kind of give me the sense that this is what it would be like to work for them.
Yeah. And if you think about it too, just because you have a title, it doesn't mean you're the leader.
Right.
So I remember one organization that I worked in where the real leader was not a person that had a title. It was somebody that was able to influence a lot of people on the production floor. Mm-hmm. So clearly just getting that title is not going to help. And I made a couple notes here that I pulled from the book. When you rely on position, you often devalue people. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's a pretty crass statement for John to make, but in reality, it means you don't believe in them. You assume they can't rather than they can. You assume they won't rather than they will. You see problems rather than potential, and you view your team members as liabilities rather than assets.
Mm-hmm.
Now we wonder why our employees not engaged, because their bosses deal with them as a liability rather than an asset.
I wonder if that is almost like a, not quite a self-fulfilling prophecy, but almost like because that's what that person maybe subconsciously sees in themselves, because they feel like they have the title, but they aren't the leader that they should be or that their people deserve, and so they kind of think about themselves that way. And
it could be, yeah.
And then see that reflection in others. I'm currently reading Speed of Trust for our leadership book study. So,
yeah, that's a great book.
So I am looking at everything differently now, whether I'm in the line at the post office or doing this. It's like really changed the way I look at things. But I wonder if that has anything to do with it.
Absolutely. Now, see, this is my bad influence behavior profile where I get on a tangent, but I was ready to say, so tell me, what do you like about the book, The Speed of Trust? And I forgot that we were doing a podcast. So.
Later.
Yeah, later. We can't go down that path right now. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, and so I think it is a self-fulfilling prophecy based on what the leader sees, but what also happens is the leader demonstrates a lack of trust with the people. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm jumping into the speed of trust. And then the people don't trust the leader. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy right there. Right. If I don't view my direct report as somebody who's capable of doing things, I won't give them opportunity to do things. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to say to me or to themselves, he doesn't trust me, so why should I even try?
And all of this leads to low engagement.
Exactly.
High turnover.
Right.
And I love the clock watchers that you mentioned.
This one I actually heard John. It's in the book, but I heard him do this on a teaching not long ago. So I'll read it out for the folks. So the clock watchers. So this is assuming we leave at 5. It's 4:45 and they're walking around visiting. 4:50 they go to the restroom. 4:55 they change their work shoes into track shoes. 4:58 they get into the starting position. And at 5 p.m. they are out the door. By 5:02, yours is the only car in the parking lot. All the others had actually backed into their position so that they could get out quicker. and I started thinking of myself and how many times I'd done that. Just waiting. Okay, how many more minutes? All right, time to go to the bathroom. Time to go change my shoes. All right, hit the remote starter. Let's go. and then it bears the question. The question bears asking, why aren't we still engaged in our job until it's time to go home? Now, in reality, some of us, if we're working very long days, we just say, look, I got to be out of here by 5, let's say.
This is going to mention, so to be fair, there are people like me who have to pick up at daycare by a certain time.
Absolutely, right.
But it is still comical because, that's true.
And I love there was a cartoon in this book where this person said, I always give 10% to my job. Or I'm sorry, 100, excuse me, I messed that up. See, I can't even tell a joke properly. I always give 110% to my job. 40% on Monday, 30% on Tuesday, 20% on Wednesday, 15% on Thursday, and 5% on Friday.
Look at that, 5% Friday.
Yeah, I've worked with those people. Mm-hmm. So I think it's only fair that I stop picking on these people and start identifying what could they do to improve, because clearly nobody, at least this way, if they're listening to the podcast, they don't want to stay a level 1 leader. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that I noted in the book, I pulled out some things that John says in this book, that the 3 irrefutable laws of leadership that really fit into a level 1 leader is the law of the lid, which makes sense. Our team can't develop beyond our leadership potential or our leadership ability. Mm-hmm. The law of process, clearly establishing that it's not the end goal, but it's the steps that we take every day to work in that direction. And then the law of navigation, which is that a leader, knows the way, shows the way, and goes the way. They see farther than others see. And so those are skills that you're going to want to be developing as a level 1 leader. But then just getting into some very practical things that a person can do to move from level 1 to level 2 is begin by thanking those that gave you the opportunity to lead. And I was struck by that. And I pondered it. So what does it mean? Well, I think it means thanking the people that literally gave you the promotion. But then I think also thanking the people that give us the privilege of leading them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're entrusting so much to us. And if we get back to the phrase I've used a lot, people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. So the people that actually agree to work for us, if I can use that crass way of putting it, they're giving us that privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege to lead them. And then the second note here that I pulled out of the book was dedicate yourself to leadership growth. I had a coaching client in this morning, and this coaching client this morning, he's amazing. He's one of my first coaching clients. He just excels every single month. One of the things that I try to get my coaching clients to do is send me your session prep form 2 days before the session. Some bring it to the meeting, but this young man sends it to me 2 days before every we meet every time. And he's doing an exceptional job, and clearly he is dedicated to growing every single day. Mm-hmm. And you can see it just in how he approaches. He finds mentors. He came in and he noticed my 5 Levels of Leadership book that was on my desk preparing for this afternoon's podcast. And he said, I saw that book. And he said, I remember seeing a YouTube that John did on it, and I think I'm going to get that book for my team. So again, that desire to grow. Now, I also had somebody, last week we had our post-holiday reception, whatever we call that. Mm-hmm. And somebody came up to me that reads my posts, my emails every week, and he said to me, don't you get tired of improving? And I just said, no. If we think about that point, when we get tired of growing and improving, we need to stop and just change jobs or something, because it's almost as though we've died and we just haven't made it official.
Yeah, right.
So then the third one was define your leadership, which is who am I, what are my values, what leadership practices do I want to put in place? And I've had people say to me in some of my classes, well, you don't understand the people I work for. Like, explain. Well, they would never do the things that they aren't going to value people. They aren't going to invest in people. And I said, what does it have to do with how you deal with your people? Mm-hmm. Because I worked for a gentleman once, and it was amazing. He was like, it was almost as though he opened an umbrella above our heads to shield us from all the garbage that came down from the top. And it was just was one of the most rewarding places for me to work for. Shift from position to potential. And I thought that was a really great thing too. I'm not looking at what my position is. I'm looking what it can be. I'm not looking at the person where they are now. I'm looking where they can be. And this speaks into one of John's favorite phrases, is that he wants us to cultivate an abundance mentality or an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. So we can't look at ourselves and think we've arrived. We have to look at ourselves and say, what yet can we do? I don't think we've scratched the potential as MACME as to what we can do for our members and for our community. We're doing well. We expanded. But who knows what's going to happen in 2 years? This could be a tremendously different place. Same thing happens, Marisa, with you, and I'm thinking about the individual member side of it that you're managing. Mm-hmm. Look at the growth in just the offerings that we're giving to the individual members. Yep. From where we were before. I love this number 5, focus on the vision. And I always tell people, so they must say, well, what do you mean by vision? I said, you have to craft a vision for the future state, where you want to be. What does it look like? You have to be able to visualize it and see it. And then you have to be able to convince your team of that. They have to connect with that vision. And I remember somebody one time saying, well, why? And I said, well, when you drive a car, where do you look? You don't look right in front of the bumper. you look as far out as you can in your field of vision.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes sure you go straight. Shift from rules to relationships. And I thought to myself, that's true in every aspect of our life.
Yep.
You know, you've got little Isla,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm sure you have rules for the house. And as Isla gets older, because I have a daughter, there were rules that were there, but I don't know if we ever talked a lot about the rules. We focused on relationships
Right.
with our kids. And perhaps some of the times that they kept the rules, if I can call it that, might not have been because there was a rule, but because of the relationship we had with them.
Right.
Here's another one. Initiate contact with your team members. Don't expect them to come to you. And that to me is a huge one, because I've seen a lot of bosses say, well, you know, there's no problems because nobody's come to me. Well, have you gone and asked?
Right.
Have you taken the time to go door to door to say, hey, how's it going? Here, this one was a great one. Don't mention your title or position.
I really like that one.
Isn't that great?
My dad is really a great guy, and I think he I don't think he'd ever really necessarily call himself like a leader, but that's what he is. He started a business. He ran it for 25 years or so. And I think he thought of himself as an entrepreneur and as an employee of the company. That was his job, and he was always there and working. He never just sat in an office. But after he sold his business, he knew it was important for him to stay. He didn't want to retire, and they asked him, well, okay, so great, like, you know, you don't own it anymore, but what do you want your title to be? And he didn't want one, and to this day he doesn't have one. That's great. He still has a very large role in the company. He's actually still customer facing, client facing, vendor facing. He manages about 80% of the business. Yep. And on his business cards, does not have a title or any reference to who he is or what he does, because it was never important to him, because that's not what, you know, having president or CEO or owner or anything on his cards, right, that's not what got the job done. And what exactly. You know, he was always good at managing those relationships, and that's what, and that's all he wanted to do. And so I've always learned that from him. I'm so glad that we're sharing that today.
That's great. You know, as you were talking about your dad, I was reminded of the owner of SelfLock, the company that I ran, that I had the privilege of being president for 12 years and plant manager for 6. And the owner, Dan Coons, who owns the company, he owns it. He and his wife own 100% of the company. And yet, 12 years before when I became president, he decided that he wanted me to be the president of his company. I was his plant manager, and he was the vice president of sales, but he was the owner.
Yep.
And, you know, it was interesting when we'd bring people in, you know, new hires. It took a little bit till they figured out that this guy walking around, you know, whose name was Dan, owned the place, because you never, ever would have known that unless you got to know him. You'd never know that he owned the company. I mean, you'd see him shoveling the sidewalk. You'd see him, you know, cleaning a bathroom. No, he's the owner. And that allowed him to have tremendous influence throughout the organization. And it was really a privilege to be able to work for him for those. I was there 18 years.
Wow.
Learn to say I don't know was the number 9th bit of advice. And I think that's huge. We talked about this when we were dealing with the diminisher type boss versus a multiplier. One of the most powerful things a leader can say is, I don't know. Help me out here. You know, people love to be asked for help. And last but not least, and I'm not doing this in some self-serving way, but find a leadership coach. You can't go it alone. It's just not possible. You need to have somebody that you're looking up to that's farther down the journey than you are, that's going to help mentor you and help you grow, and somebody that's going to give you those hard answers and those hard, somebody that's going to say, that was really stupid. Why did you do that? Now, maybe in a nicer way, but you need that criticism, the critiquing, to be able to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of wrapping it up, level 1 leaders, all of us have to start there. And one of the things with progressing from level 1 to level 5, until you can say that 8 out of those 10 you're still stuck at that level. So I may do 4 out of level 1, 5 out of level 2, 3 out of level 3. I'm still a level 1 leader till I get 8 or 10 of those key points in that assessment I spoke of earlier down. Once I get that, now I build into level 2. And the other thing that I remember John saying somewhere in the book is that, there's times in our careers when we regress and we drop back. And then we have to build again from the foundation. But the goal is that once we get to that level where we really start developing our team, when we get there, we've got a team that's really engaged. Mm-hmm. And we will have the best employees in town because people will say, I want to go work for her. She's got her act together and she values her people.
Cool.
So how's that for wrapping up level 1 kind of quick?
That's great. And I won't have to ask you what we're talking about next week because I
level
already
2.
know we're talking about level 2.
We are.
Awesome.
So anything exciting happening this weekend?
Well, we just started swim lessons last weekend. So
cool.
It gives us something to look forward to in the weekends. Isla loves the pool, loves to swim. So it's fun and we're just working on the house. We're going to be putting it on the market March 1st. So
good.
Just working on that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like fun.
Yeah. How about you?
Tile work in the bathroom.
Exciting
People
times.
say, aren't you done yet? Well, somebody said to me, yeah, you could probably expect to spend 12 to 16 hours just setting the tile in the shower. I'm like,
wow.
Oh.
Imagine how long it's taking the people that are doing our lobby at work.
It's unbelievable. How long? My bathroom will be done before they are. But.
It's a very detail-oriented process. But think of how satisfying it will be when it's all done and you look at it and you're like, I laid every single one of those, and I'm sure that they will be perfectly in line.
Well,
and
I wish I could say that. So what I find on the floor is that one tile that's up just a bit. Drives me nuts.
Of course, that's what you find.
They will not be perfect, even though an old toolmaker laid the tile, because I'm not a tile man. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It is rewarding. And, they came last Friday to measure for the countertops and things and the tub surround. So my hope is that by the time the stone comes to put on the counters and around the tub, I will have the shower ready. Mm-hmm. So that's the plan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very
but
good.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
So, and I'm also excited about continuing on this topic of the 5 levels of leadership. Again, I want to remind people to subscribe, so that you get the notifications and things automatically when our podcast is released. Sign up for the emails. Give us a review. I went and noticed, and we've got 8 reviews.
Awesome.
Those could all be relatives. I'm not sure. I didn't look, but anyways. And with that, I just knocked something else over here in this Studio 7. But with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was The Next Page.